Nancy and Lindsay had been together all Lindsay's life. Now, alone, Nancy waited, ticking off the days. In the dark about where her daughter was and about the pace of the investigation. Police were not keeping her in the loop, so Nancy was delighted when they called to say they were coming to visit. You look at the boyfriend, Matthew. You look at Marty, the older guy, the relationship nobody knew about. He denies it.
Right.
You look at Chris. He says, I dropped her off, I never saw her again.
Right.
And you look at Lindsay's mother.
We did look at Lindsay's mother. You have to.
So I made my cookies and all this kind of silly stuff that I always
coffee,
do.
right?
Yeah.
The cops weren't coming for coffee. They arrived with a search warrant, shovels, and cadaver dogs.
I was shocked that they even suspected me. I didn't know what even a search warrant was.
The house Nancy and Lindsay had once shared was torn apart. How much of a suspect was Nancy?
I don't know that Nancy was on the radar for a long time. She was on the radar long enough to be able to set her aside.
After that search, they did just that. They believed this anguished mother had nothing to do with the disappearance of her daughter. So they took Nancy off the list. They also took off the boyfriend, Matthew. He had an alibi that held up, putting him somewhere else at the time Lindsay went missing. So that left just two.
I haven't seen her since that day.
Marty, whom police didn't trust because of his secret relationship with Lindsay, and because he had lied about his identity. And the man who dropped Lindsay off at that corner, the last person to see her before she vanished, Chris McCamus.
You go on in here, grab a seat there at the end. Do you remember Corinne Limit? Yeah.
April 2002, more than a year after Lindsay went missing, detectives decided to start over. They brought Chris McCamus back to see if his story still held up.
I really wouldn't like to think that Lindsay has been, like, either abducted or something's happened to her.
Like what?
I'd really rather think that she was with friends or something like that.
Police turned up the heat.
Let's cut the bull about being positive. Let's just get down to the nitty-gritty and strip away the I'd like to think. And in my Pollyanna mind, you know, if all things in a perfect world, then I'd hope she's frolicking on a beach someplace, okay?
It's a possibility she's dead.
Right.
His lack of emotion was suggestive that perhaps Chris should move to the top of the list, but it was not evidence. After the interview, Chris McCamus was free to leave, and detectives weren't any closer to learning what happened to Lindsay Eklund. You thought that one day she would walk back through the door.
Yes.
She believed it because she wanted to, and because over the years several people had told her they'd seen Lindsay.
They never saw the front of her face. They always saw the back of her. And I held on to every word they said.
We worked this case diligently for a long time. At some point, you hit the wall.
There are 9 detectives in Placentia, working everything: drugs, gangs, rapes, murder, and cold cases. By 2008, it was clear Placentia PD had hit that wall. They would need help on this one. And who they needed was a guy named Larry. Tell me about Larry.
Larry is phenomenal.
Phenomenal because what? He sees things other cops don't see?
Phenomenal because he sees things cops don't see. I don't know anybody who could have done a better job than Larry.
The evidence whisperer was about to listen to what the facts of this case were really saying.
When we come back, was there something that police had missed? You bet. That picture of the truck spotted on the night of the crime, something about it just doesn't seem right. And the evidence whisperer is all over it. When the night Lindsay disappeared continues.